There's one thing that I think Hollywood really is embarrassing. They need to stop casting handsome people to play serial killers. These people are losers. They smell. Most women don't like them. But they always make it seem like these people are players and they could have been normal people in society. They're not. They sit in their basement, they jerk off, they have weird fantasies, and sometimes mental illness issues. And hey guys, welcome back to the reaction channel. Actually, today we're gonna be talking about something. We're gonna be doing something a little bit different. We're gonna be talking about Monster, the Ed Gein story. Some of you might have watched this on Netflix already. Spoiler alert, I will be talking in depth about the series and some of the events that transpired. So as always, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what else you want me to review. Maybe I'm gonna start doing some reviews for movies, start doing some reviews on popular TV series, so on and so on. So let's just discuss Ed Gein. Right off the bat, my impressions of this series is they need to. There's one thing that I think Hollywood really is embarrassing. They need to stop casting handsome people to play serial killers. These people are losers. They smell. Most women don't like them, but they always make it seem like these people are players and they could have been normal people in society. They're not. They sit in their basement, they jerk off, they have weird fantasies, and sometimes mental illness issues. And even though the series did touch on that a lot, I don't think some people watch these series with enough critical thought to be like, hey, maybe don't be like that guy. Because years later, this guy ends up being immortalized in a series called Monster, the Ed Gein story. If you haven't watched it, I do not recommend. I do recommend maybe for research purposes. If you kind of like certain stories, the way they tie together. If you love a good story, maybe it's a story that you might want to watch. But again, I didn't leave that thinking that, oh, wow, interesting. I left that thinking, yuck. People have sex with dead bodies and it is disturbing. That Ed Gein story struck me. Now, just do a little bit of a backstory. I just put it down on the Wikipedia. Monster, the Ed Gein story is the third season of an American biographical crime drama anthology television series Monster, created by Ian Brennan for Netflix. The series focuses on convicted murderer, grave robber, and suspected serial killer Ed Gein, who's played by Charlie Hunnam. Look at this guy. Can you see this guy? Why are they casting these people to play serial killers? All of the serial killers have jawlines, apparently. What the hell? Jawline, six-pack, serial killer. Boom! Just get on this workout regime, take steroids, do the dumbbell curls, everything, look good for TV. Then you show up for the TV thing and be like, hey, guess what? You're playing a serial killer that has sex with dead bodies. Ridiculous. His hair was perfect the entire series. I don't know if you saw it. Even when he killed someone, his hair didn't even stand up. The thing just looked straight. I was looking at his hair like, man, god damn, look at that haircut. Look at that boy. I didn't know they had good barbers in Wisconsin. Get that man a haircut, god damn it. Ridiculous. The cast also includes Susanna's son, which is this lady right there, and Vicky Kelps, Laurie Metcalf, and Tom Hollander. The season incorporates meta-commentary on the culture obsession with true crime, exploring Gein's influence on Hollywood and pop culture. Now, this is why I think the series can't get 0 stars, because I would have loved to give this 0 stars because It's a criminal and it's disgusting. But they did do a good job in explaining how true crime fanatics fantasize and make killers bigger or is more popular than they should be. Let's just go into it, because I wrote a few notes here, and it's very important that we maybe go through this in chronological order from episode 1. We'll start with the Godfather of Syria. The title for episode 1 was Mother, and it follows Gein and introduction to Gein. And you know, if you remember his voice, I don't know how to do his voice. His voice was something more like, oh, I didn't know it like that. What do you mean? I didn't kill all those people. What? Dead bodies? I didn't do that. He sounded kind of like a crossover between Cookie Monster. If like Cookie Monster had a baby with Snuffleupagus from like Sesame Street, like 2 Sesame Street characters made a baby, you'd sound like that. What do you mean? I didn't kill people. Fascinating. This guy was crazy, my boy. He had weird behaviors right off the bat. I mean, look, in the beginning of the series, what we started with is basically we see Ed Gein working in the garage. He's a farmer. He lives in Wisconsin, and then he kills his brother. And what happens, I think, in the thing is like he kills him, and then minutes later he thinks he's still alive. He thinks he's sleeping or something, and that right there was the beginning of his many crimes to come. Things got more gruesome and more gruesome, and in that first episode, Mother, they describe his relationship with his mother. They also show that his mother was not a good person. She was really deeply spiritual, which, by the way, there's not a problem with that. It's a problem is when spirituality comes before some people's feelings, and I've noticed that in some families it's like that, and all those repressed feelings, they start to come out and express themselves in very, very unhealthy ways. That's kind of what happened to Ed Gein in this series. They depict his mother as almost like an evangelical, radical Christian. It's like, this boy needs a Jesus. I'm surprised he didn't spray him with water when he was wearing bikini. Which would have made him hotter. Crazy, right? Right at the end of the episode, somewhere in the middle of the episode, the mom starts shouting to a point where she has a stroke and dies in front of Ed Gein. This was one of those scenes where I thought that and then the mother would then come out in certain points of the series as like a ghost or a figment of his imagination. Maybe some sort of trauma started to dig out. At the end of the episode, he essentially wants his mother back. So it's a problem when you have a mother who's evangelical Christian or like deeply into religion, because somehow they're able to attach your feelings and your mental state and your mental well-being, they attach it to their proclivity to survive. So basically, if the mother dies, that guy wants her back or starts acting out her mother's fantasies, and she lives on in some weird way. He tried to dig her corpse up. Unfortunately, it was locked away in a safe, and so she had to dig up the woman next to her. Why not? Because she's like her. Expired, bro. Basically, when I saw episode 1, I did not want to continue watching the series, but in the back of my mind I was like, this is number 1 for a reason, and maybe I should figure out what that reason is, which takes us all the way to episode 2. And the title of episode 2 is Sick as Your Secrets, and it starts to talk about Ed's obsession with dead bodies. They tied somehow to Nazi Germany and some of the concentration camp atrocities that were happening over there, And they were saying that Ed Gein got inspiration from seeing all those dead bodies and thought, maybe I should copy that in America. Which, by the way, I don't know how true that is. I'm a bit skeptical that's where he drew all his inspirations, because in the back of my mind, I think to myself that back in the day, there was no internet, barely telephones. It's 1940 something around America, in the middle of Wisconsin, by the way. Where are they getting these gory pictures of dead people in concentration camps? If people were making money back then, selling this pseudo gore content in the form of magazines, you can tell that we've graduated to a darker place. Because I've heard about the dark web, never been. But I've heard, I don't know how many people are actually on the dark web. I don't know how prevalent or bad it is. But if you go down that rabbit hole of death, there needs to be like some sort of structure that stops you from going further and further down. Because it happens. Some people watch true crime videos all the time. I've actually watched a few videos and I've gotten to the point where I was like, I need to stop this. Because after I watch a true crime video, I don't feel better. I feel worse. Maybe more scared, more paranoid, more whatever the case may be. So then they started to link the story and they started to introduce a new character, Alfred Hitchcock. Another weirdo, by the way. Out here peeping through little holes, trying to see people changing. Ew, yuck. He was like Harvey Weinstein before Harvey Weinstein was Weinstein. He was like the OG Harvey Weinstein, just with an English accent. Hello, love. Do you want to roll in this movie, love? Nah, I'm good, bro. Good, Harvey. Hitchcock describes using Ed Gein as inspiration to write Scream, a movie that will become a cult classic in the future. And basically he talks about sorry, not Scream, American Psycho or Psycho. So it inspires Norman Bates from the movie Psycho. That's the character on Psycho, and his audience. And then what happens when he portrays, he uses Ed Gein's story to basically make a movie about American Psycho. He starts to notice that the reaction from the public is either appalled or they love it. And this is the beginning of the horror, I would say, genre. And it starts to become more popular and you start to see it sell out a lot more than anything else that he's done. And so it's always that thing as an artist where you do something and you really want it to be a one-off because you want to depict it in its true entirety. And then once you realize that people want more of that, you go back to making some more and it just becomes more and more damaging, which is important. If you're an artist and you think about doing art, do art for yourself. Don't do art according to the audience. The problem with following what audiences like is that they want more and they want worse and they want bigger and more damaging versions of that thing. So it starts off all nice. Oh, it's all good, and then someone hijacks it to, like, you know. A good example of this would be maybe like the civil rights movement. You know, the way people take civil rights and they were like, we're just fighting for rights for black people, and then they turned it into, we need to fight every other race. It's just, you know, it slowly turns into race baiting, rage bait, and it's all this drama surrounding it. So Adeline, which is another one of the characters that have been portrayed, has been portrayed as Ed Gein's lover, a strange lover from Wisconsin, and she's also a weirdo, but she's more than a weirdo. She's one of those weirdos that sees weirdo behavior and decides, you know what, I'm gonna make it more weird, or I'm gonna encourage that because I needed to further my own agenda. If there's anything that the series did do, it did not do that girl justice. It made her look like an evil son of a bitch. It was bad. And then it turns out her mom was a bitch. And then we have this whole thing where she goes around telling Ed, please, just kill some more people, Ed. I really want to take pictures so that I can go to New York and become famous. Did not work out. So his first killing, Ed has always been like a weird character, always twitching, walking around town with a limp, just being weird. But no one took him seriously because, again, if you have a voice like this, no one takes you seriously. People think you're harmless, and that's how he ends up in a room by himself with Mary Hogan, his first victim, official victim, because we're not sure what happened to his brother. If that was real or not, it seemed like they blended it a little bit with the fiction and the reality. He kills Mary Hogan with the shotgun and then drags her body to the house. The two detectives come in to see what Ed is doing. And by the way, I think at this point, Ed had his mother. He had the body that he dug up, which was not his mother, just sitting there, lifeless, upstairs. The guys come in. I think Ed is wearing part of her skin, dancing in bikinis, and then they knock on the door. He changes real quick, and then he puts on this persona of, look at me, which makes me think that this guy is an actual killer. That was the first time where I think, look, is this a mental illness, or is it really that this guy is he knows what he's doing? Because if you're gonna hide a crime, if he was actually insane, you probably would have opened the door with the skin still on it. So again, I guess they made a good job of making it seem ambiguous of whether or not he was a monster in the beginning, and then they made it clear that he had mental issues later on. So right at the end of this series, when Alfred Hitchcock is making, because they flash back and forth, that's why this review sounds the way it does. Alfred Hitchcock casts a young man by the name of Anthony Perkins to play Psycho, and then shows them an inspiration of the Ed Gein. They basically remake his house exactly how it was according to all the crime scene photos that they took, and then they show Anthony Perkins try vaginas at the end of the tried out vaginas, basically vaginas that have been skinned out and then put in the sun to dry. And then he was like, look at that. And Anthony Perkins, being as gay as he was the best thing that could have happened to him, because he was like, whew, thank God I'm gay, goddammit. They cast him because I believe that Alfred Hitchcock knew that he was gay and he had his own secrets, so he wanted him to channel those to play that role as Psycho, and he did an amazing job, and unfortunately it became a cult classic, and it becomes problematic after that. So let's check out episode 3. On episode 3 we have the babysitter. Now this is the part where Ed Gein strikes me as, I think this was the episode where they tried to make him more human, but again they just completely failed. So he was just a young man, he's an eligible bachelor, Adeline's in his life, she's just as weird as him, sick, and they take it upon themselves to meet up, start having conversations about getting married, and she wants to get married, have kids, but she wants Ed to gain experience so that he can be a good father someday. And then Ed gets this babysitting job, which, if you have a voice like this, I can babysit your kids, I can look after them. Any parent would be like, yeah, sure, I would never let a man babysit my kids. I don't know what it is, but the stigma with men is just not good with kids. And I don't know if I think the average man can take care of kids, and they can take care of them well. It's just something that we're not inclined to do or we love to do. And so the rare situation where you have a male babysitter and they really mess up, or they can't wait to jump on this guy. And because Ed sounds the way he sounded, be like harmless, he takes the kids out to a joyride. He actually takes them to his house and then starts showing them some of the dead bodies he already has there. And at this point, I think he might have dug up 2 or 3 bodies. And then his necrophilia is getting into chasmatic levels. Again, he's battling with the fact that he still sees his mom in the back of his head. And so he keeps having these conversations where he gets to say, "No, Mom, I'ma do what I like." But she's dead. Terrible. He then so after showing all these masks and dead bodies to the kids go back. They don't report it to the parents, but they do say that this guy is a weirdo. The guy almost beats him up, and then he says, "You owe me 27 cents," which was, I think, hilarious. and he drives off crying, and then he goes, "We'll never let this guy babysit, let's sweep it under the rug." Never caught. His demeanor saved him so much, and maybe that's what makes serial killers so scary, is because they have a very harmless demeanor. Not all of them. Some of them, you can tell that this guy's a creep, but they usually just get caught reckless, maybe a lot more violent or anything. It's always the guys that are a bit more, that's why whenever I see guys pandering to women, like serious pandering, I'm like, something wrong with this boy. This boy is probably one of those guys that's an actual problem. A sheep in wolf in sheep's clothing, basically. So they replace him with a babysitter named Evelyn, and then Evelyn gets kidnapped by Gein, and Gein kills her too. And which takes us to episode 4, Green. Adeline discovers a body instead of going to the police, and she rushes home. So this is when Ed was trying to romance Evelyn, trying to get that romance going. They took her upstairs, and I think when they were upstairs at some point, she discovers that Ed has a dead mom, but he still thinks she's alive. So she got creeped out and ran away. That should have been the first sign to call the police. And instead of going to the police, she just ran home and stood behind the tree and was like, I wonder how he's reacting right now. Ed was crying, having his but again, back in the day, it was not there was no mental health discussions like that. And so maybe there's no pattern recognition to be like, this guy might actually have mental issues. And now it's so recognized that, which is a problem. So the opposite effect is like this with the mental health scale. I always look at it like a spectrum, no pun intended. Like, this is where you never talk about mental health, and this is the point where you talk about it all the time. So these are both bad because they are both extreme ends of the same thing. Here you ignore the problem, here you acknowledge it and see nothing wrong with it, which is what's probably happening now. Situations where people have mental health illnesses and they're also giving lessons or trying to help people out with mental issues when they have mental issues of their own. Can you imagine that? Bro, I want to kill myself. Me too. Let's go. She then asks Ed for the truth. So Adeline is rushed home. Ed follows her home. She asks Ed for the truth, and Ed verbatim tells him, he's like, listen, bro, I'm having sex with dead bodies. Wow. That's the point when Ed actually introduces another love interest. And I had hope for this. I had so much hope for Ed. The point where he met that older lady who worked at the paint store. I don't remember her name, but Ed was interested in her boobs a lot, and he kept staring at the boobs the whole time, like, I don't know if I'm twitching right, but like he was doing that, and then she was like, oh my god, and she was like, enjoying all the attention. They went out for roller skating, and Ed got some pussy. That should have been the end of his killing spree. No! It was just the beginning. And it was one of those things where when that happened in that point in the series, I thought about the desperation that some people have to feel something, that they are willing to overlook a lot of the red flags that are obvious. Ed Gein had a lot of red flags, but she chose to look and play into that thing because she was lonely. For example, Ed liked wearing women's underwear, which in 1940 something, not controversial now, do what you like, but in 1940 something should have been that first red flag. But she did not take it that way. She encouraged it and even gave him a gift. Look, Ed. Oh wow, I love that. And so after having sex with Ed goes back home. He tells Ed, you need to come back and live with me. Maybe that could have been the turning point, but it just did not work out that way. Ed started seeing visions of his mother, talking about this person's a heathen, you can't be sleeping with women. He basically vilified women the way that could, in a way where it could psychologically break him down to a point where he became a monster. And so when he went back and was broken up with, he decided, I'm gonna shoot you with the shotgun. Pow! Dead. Another victim. And all the meanwhile, no one's really questioning Ed because Ed has no friends. No one really watches Ed the way they should. I'm not saying you should always hang out with weird people, but it's worth watching those people. Don't call the police on them. You just have to be careful because some of your friends that are like absolutely odd and weird, they need some type of help that you could always sound the alarm on when you see it, but you never do until it's too late, obviously. But you can't stop most of these things. He then took that lady's body, hung her upside down, and Adeline went on to take pictures. Adeline did not look good at all during this series. She looked selfish. She looked like she had her own mental health illnesses. She was not well written. And the reason why I think she was not well written was because the story wasn't necessarily about her. And so she came off worse for, like, if there was monster, Adeline looked like a way worse monster. Not so much that she killed anyone, but because she was just navigating this thing more from a selfish, unhinged way. So Toby Hooper then makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this doesn't really have a lot about Ed Gein. I don't think it has a direct tie to Ed Gein, but the fact that he had the whole mask and stuff with the chainsaw and stuff, with Ed chasing people with the chainsaw and doing all these creative killings, became a theme where they were linking every single pop culture moment in the 60s to Ed Gein and his actions. They also talked about in episode 5, which is where you move on to episode 5, Ice. Adeline roasting Randy. That was a roast session, bro, if ever I saw one. Adeline was having sex with a local farm boy in Wisconsin, and farmer, he had the farmer's pride, and then she sort of cut him down to size. And this is what I mean, that they did not do her justice. They made her seem like she was the cockiest, most self-absorbed human being from the entire series. Ed looked like he had mental illnesses, which is why a lot of people are kind of feeling sorry for him, especially in situations where you would meet a normal person, knowing that this person has mental illness He meets a normal person, you're like, this normal person should not be treating this mental illness person like that. He needs to understand that this guy is mental. No. This guy is a creep. But again, it's Wisconsin. How many psych wards do you know in Wisconsin? Adeline went to New York finally. She got that opportunity to go to New York, and she realized that the world is cold. It's cold, bro. She was shaking in her boots every single time she was in New York, and she ended up killing someone. They say she killed her. I think she just beat her up with heels and left her alive. Because if you die from getting hit with heels, maybe your time was already up. I don't know. But she took her out and then ran back to Wisconsin. Her mother explains how she never wanted her, never loved her. And, you know, that whole thing where they sort of try to empathize with that. That's where they tried to make her look human, and they completely failed. Because what she did after that was she didn't really try to change her ways, get better or whatever. She just ran to Ed and said, I need a place to stay. And then tried to sleep with Ed, and then Ed said, you're too warm. That was the most chilling statements that I've ever heard in my entire life. I've never even seen some. Listen, if you're using a pocket pussy right now and you're setting the settings to cold, you need help. That's bad. Episode 6 is called Books on Bird, and Detective Frank starts looking for mom, and this is when Ed's crimes are about to be discovered. Sheriff Art Shirley, they search the farmhouse, and then they find all of Ed's secrets. And this is when Ed, the famous scene when Ed drives down his driveway after discovering a whole bunch of bodies that way. Initially I thought they were not gonna find the bodies, but they found everything. They found the masks, they found the bodies, they found that woman's thing laying, just looking like a slaughtered cow. It was horrible. And at this point, this is kind of where I should have stopped, but I couldn't. It's winter, which is also another thing that I want to discuss. Is like, it's very how can I say this? It's very convenient that they released this right at the beginning of winter. It's like they just want to put you in this like, oh, this series can only do well when people go back into the house and they go back to living in encampments. That's when they're gonna watch this. It was an unnecessary thing. No, actually it was necessary. It was just one of those things where I didn't know how to feel after that. Because I guess at the end of the day, Ed Gein was a human being, and so when you look at that series, you see what humans are capable of, and you know you could never do that, but in the back of your head you're just like, oh my god, do we even should we even exist? I don't know. They discover Ed Gein's body, and then Frank, so that surreal moment when they realize that he's a psychopath, they start questioning him. And meanwhile, Frank starts dealing with losing his mom in a particular way. He starts drowning himself in alcohol, which is never the solution. And what he also does, which was also interesting, was he goes and starts to sell stuff, some of Ed Gein's things. And that's one thing that I've never understood. Why would anyone want to wear a serial killer's clothes? Maybe not wear it, just have it in the house. Why? Why would you have... Maybe a lot of people aren't very spiritual, they don't believe in the spiritual realm or whatever, but just that stench of murder. Why would you want to have it around the house? Why not? A lot of people were doing that. In the back of my mind, I was thinking when they finally diagnosed him in episode 7, which is called The Radio. I Thank God there was a bit of sense in the series. Someone actually burnt Ed Gein's house down, which should have been, maybe not. Yeah, they should have burnt that down because it's a house of horrors, and I don't think anyone wants a property where 16 dead bodies were pre-existing before that. In episode 7, where they finally start diagnosing Ed Gein, and they mention that he has schizophrenia. I was glad to see him get the mental health that he deserved. And this was back when mental health hospitals were still very good, well funded and everything, before America started taking all their funds, cutting it in half every single year. Mental health, half. Before then, they used to really take that stuff seriously. And Ed was in a good home, and he was actually getting the help that he wanted. He gets pills for the first time. He discovers clarity, because he was having conversations through a radio with people that did not exist. And they also mentioned that he had gynophilia, which is like the obsession with women's bodies. Like, he wants to be inside a woman's body. He doesn't know, which is completely different from transgenderism, which, you know, it's good that they mentioned that, because but the way they still tied it to a mental illness was just one of those things where I was like, again, the mental illness needle keeps shifting. If you actually watch, maybe that's what they talk about in our pop culture. You know, they romanticize the idea of serial killers. In episode 8, where they talk about Godfather, this was the most concerning episode for me, because again, the only good thing that Ed did was figure out how to catch Ted Bundy through a series of letters from a guy named Jerry Brandos. No, I mean from Richard Speck, I think, who had his own boobs. Yuck. Richard Speck, who had his own boobs, wrote a letter to him, said, "Oh, I have this guy who's a fan of mine, but I'm a fan of yours, so let me show you extra fans of fans." And I was just like, what? So now they have a serial killers boys club, and this whole thing where Ed decides that, he realizes that he was a monster and tries to help by catching the serial killer that did all of this. There was no praise. There wasn't enough praise, and this is just how society is. It's like they caught the biggest serial killer at the time because of Ed Gein's help, because he was able to give a good profile and description. And instead of having a parade, a celebration, a reward, or something, anything for Ed, all they had was an old man die in front of him. His time was also coming. Ed would also get lung cancer later on and die in the series. And to say that there were no happy points in the series is an understatement. Barely any happy points. The few happy points we got were kind of sick and twisted. Like in the middle of the, I believe in the middle of the series, they did this whole thing where Ed Gein is dying and he's getting wheeled out in a wheelchair, and there's just a row of serial killers on either side just praising him for all the success that he had in his time. Thank you for passing down the torch. This is why they call him the godfather of serial killers. I had never heard of Ed Gein before this. I didn't even want to, but it does explain a lot. I don't know if it's accurate to say that he was the reason why people decided, hey, let me go into serial killing in the early 60s and 70s, but it was ramping. At the end of the day, if I was to give this out of 10, I would give this series a 5.5. And not because I hate, I just think there wasn't enough happy points. I'm not sure they tried to glorify his crimes, undermine his crimes. They just sort of gave a depiction of what was, and that could be a documentary. That's not a series. They did try to highlight the problems that we have as society when we glorify serial killers or we make it, but that's not our fault. That's the newspaper's fault. The newspaper prints those headlines out. 15 people killed by one guy down the street. Maybe don't cross that street. That's not our fault. But people eat it up. They just want rage. They talk about how to sell stuff is shock value. creates entertainment. You don't need shock value to create entertainment. That's an American idea. Especially to take shock value to the point where it divides people on opinions, and then some people get obsessed and then they decide to go on this 5.5. That's all I'm gonna say. I did like the series that they had before the Menendez case. I think it might be from the same producer, but this one was not. This one was not it. I guess maybe it was too gory for me. Other people might have liked it. If you did like this, I don't know why, because there was no real empathy with any of these characters. They just portrayed them the way they were. There you go. There's your cup of tea. Ed Gein, the monster. I don't think for the life of me other countries don't have serial killers that were as bad as Ed Gein, maybe even worse. But because America glorifies it, puts it on a newspaper, sells their little trinkets of stuff, makes it a whole controversy, talk of the town, this and that, movies. It becomes a thing where instead of being swept under the rug and forgotten, it's glorified and continued years later. There was no I think at the end of the day, there was no justification for making this. That's why I'm making giving it a 5.5. Either way, the cinema work, those guys did a good job, and that's about it. Let me know what you think. Did you guys enjoy this? Would you watch it again? Is this something you would throw on anytime you feel nostalgic? Like, hey, remember in 25 when they made this great Ed Gein story? You wanna see this again? It's one of those things, one and done. That's it. But when I did start watching it, what was concerning was I never took my eyes off of it. But again, that was social proof. That was peer pressure. That was Netflix pressure. I saw the ratings. I was like, this is ranked number 1. I have to watch this. And honestly, I will never get my hour back. It's way more than an hour. I'll never get those 8 hours back. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.